What terms, like rewind, are still used every day even though they've lost their core relevance? The soap opera. These serials were usually sponsored by soap companies, aimed at housewives. The association has gone away but the name stuck. Procter & Gamble had the longest running soap opera, which ended not too long ago. Also, the first soap operas were radio shows. The CC line on an email is an acronym that stands for carbon copy. When I first learned to use a mechanical typewriter as a child, before Xerox machines, my grandfather gave me nice typing paper, but also sheets of paper coated with carbon on one side. To make a carbon copy, you carefully place the carbon paper in between two pieces of paper, being careful to put the carbon coated side facing down. Each strike of the typewriter key imprinted a copy on the second piece of paper. A typical typewriter could handle up to 2-3 sheets of paper, layered with carbon. At the end of the letter, proper etiquette required a CC line. On this line, you would type CC, followed by the names of all the people receiving a copy. Now if you didn't want the original recipient to know that you were sending out copies, you would not type a CC line, and this was known as a blind carbon copy, which we now know as the BCC line. Put a sock in it, originally referencing dampening the sound of gramophones with socks, as they had no volume control. Once upon a time, a wiretap required putting a device on a physical piece of wire connected to a phone. Now we just have our microwaves do it. Movie trailers used to be shown at the end of a movie. Now they are shown before the movie, so the name doesn't make sense. In the 1950s when I was a little boy, the movie theater was always a double feature. Your ticket bought you 2 movies, including the drive-in. A couple of cartoons preceded the first movie and trailers were played in between movies. Footage, used to refer to lengths of film. We don't use film anymore for TV replays. Or just the term filming in general. Also, taping something. This is used less frequently now but it was alive and well even 10 years ago. Cob is an archaic word for spider, but we still say cobweb. I have a fun nautical one I learned from my uncle when I was young. Son of a gun is actually quite a horrible thing to call a person. Back when ships usually didn't allow women to join, for various reasons, the highlight of docking was allowing prostitutes on board. And, you know, when a man and a woman have enough time together, children are born and presented to the ship. In the log it would go, if the man would, man up and claim it as their own. The log would read something like daughter of Samuel was born or son of Jonathan was born. If none of the men claimed the child, the ledger would read, son of a gun was born. Turning lights on and off is a vestige of the Gaslight era when you would literally turn a valve. Speak for yourself, I have dimmers. Also in French they say literally open and close the lights. Dashboard. It originally referred to a barrier of wood to protect a carriage of the mud and dirt thrown up, or dashed up, by the hooves of the horse. And to go even further, we don't just use it for cars now, but also to refer to data visualizations on a screen. The English language is full of nautical terminology from the age of sail like leeway, skyscraper or listless. Kind of the opposite thought, but this struck me not too long ago. I was playing tag with my kids and noticed they'd yell pause the game anytime they needed to stop. Made total sense with video games being a big part of their lives, but it was different enough from the timeout that I grew up with that it stayed with me. Language is not static. This opposite one reminds me of that kid who asked to Senator why Trump wanted to delete all the parks. Politics aside, his use of delete was interesting. Not a term, but I find it funny when you get someone's voicemail on their cell phone and they say I'm not here right now or something along those lines. Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Referring to letters as uppercase or lowercase is terminology from when the printing press was still used. Each letter was a die that had to be placed in a frame, inked, and pressed on the paper. These letter dies were stored in drawers or cases. Capital letters were in the top drawers, uppercase, and lowercase letters were in the bottom drawers. Also, a lot of tools in Photoshop, burn, dodge, mask, are named for the darkroom processes that would have had the same effect. The term cliché derived from the practice of presetting common phrases in type and sticking them together, cliché in français, so it would speed up the process of setting the page. People say it so often, it has become a cliché. People on YouTube thanking you for tuning in. Hang up the phone. Or to dial a number. News organizations are still called the press after the printing press. Flashing the bias. For the geeks among us, it used to mean peeling back a sticker and exposing the chip to light. Dumb, idiot and moron. We use them as kind of low-grade insults, but at one point in time they were exclusively medical terms for the mentally disabled impaired. Imbecile was one of these, too. To clarify for everyone, dumb was a synonym for mute, idiot, imbecile, and moron were terms used to describe one's mental capacity. A moron, IQ 51-70, was more mentally capable than an imbecile, and an idiot was the least so, IQ 0-25. Shotgun, like in a car, I call shotgun. That dates back to the horse-drawn car. Rages and the driver controlling the horse would have a person with a shotgun defending and or shooting anything trying to get on the cart. In my car, passengers call shogun and spend the ride protecting from barbarian invasion and quelling peasant uprisings. The static at the beginning of an HBO show. Whole generations have no idea why there is static there. Never mind why it's there, they don't know what it is. The HDMI and digital TV age has eliminated ever seeing static. I still refer to the enter key as the return key. My kid's response, Dad needs to return to the here and now. You must return to the future. The Romans used piles of pebbles as computation aids. A pebble in this pile means 1, a pebble in that pile means 10, and so on. If you've ever used an abacus you can see how this would work. So the word for pebble began to be used more generally for any kind of counting or reckoning, and eventually just for computation in general. So how do you say pebble in Latin? Well, the word for limestone was calx, which is the root of English words like chalk and calcium. But if you had only a little bit of limestone, a pebble, you used the diminutive, calculus. By the time what we now call calculus was being invented in the 17th century, no one was doing math by counting pebbles anymore. It was just a generic word for solving a math problem. In Czech Republic we have a phrase "dávej bacha," which means watch out. Originally it was used in 1850s when our country was under Austrian-Hungary rule. Bach was actually a person's name. That person was chief of secret police. So when people said dávej bacha they would mean watch out for secret police. Today it just means watch out. Didn't lose all relevance but I still find it interesting. Third world. It emerged during the Cold War to refer to countries that were not allied with the United States, the First World, or the Soviet Union, the Second World. Today, we still use it to refer to less developed countries. It is one of those terms that is politically incorrect in the most literal sense, because it refers to a political situation that has not existed in almost 30 years. Not a term but the save icon being a floppy disk. The little girl I watch asked me to charge the Christmas tree. What she wanted was for me to plug it in, but she literally has never plugged anything in. Everything she touches gets charged. The newest example I can think of that might qualify as podcast, as a noun or verb. I imagine there are at least as many people still rolling their windows up and down as using a dedicated iPod. B-side is still used when talking about CD singles. Threshold. Thresh is the non-edible parts of grains and was often used to cover flooring back in ye olden times. There would be a plank of wood at the bottom of the door to hold in the thresh so it wouldn't fly outside every time you opened the door. Also the tradition of carrying the bride over the threshold was because their dress would get caught on the plank. It was unlucky for the bride to trip over the threshold so the groom would carry her over just to be sure she didn't stumble. I still call a remote a clicker because the first one we had actually clicked. It was also connected to the television with a cord. Roll up down the window. Speak for yourself, my back windows are still manual. Referring to song as tracks, in the vinyl record days, songs were literally recorded on tracks, grooves, in the surface of the record. I drive a Nissan Leaf and talk about how much fuel I still have in the tank. Battery gauge says 50%, I have a half tank. 75% 3/4 of a tank, slowly trying to change my phrasing to half a charge and such. I like this one. Sounds like something kids will make fun of us for in 50 years. Not a term, but a sound. The camera shutter. Smartphones obviously don't have them, but we all sure as heck understand what the sound is. I am aware DSLRs etc and old cameras still exist, but majority of everyday people probably won't use them or not straight away. I once had someone at a wedding reception ask me to turn the sound off on my DSLR. I then had to explain how a camera works to them. Also, it was the freaking reception. Go somewhere else if I'm annoying you. Driver. It's used when you operate a car, but the term comes from controlling livestock, like being on a cattle drive. Horse-drawn carriages had a driver that drove the horse to where they wanted to go. We really only operate vehicles now, but the term driver has stuck around for a century past its core relevance. A car is just a mechanical horse built by a committee. Cut and paste. From back when we physically cut up paper with text on it and glued it back down in a new place. Page layout used to be much harder. Similarly, clip art refers to the drawings that came in a book full of stock images. You'd clip them out of the book, cut them out with scissors, and place them onto a page. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.